Joy, I'll tell you what, why don't you start us off? Tell us where you're from and tell us all these exciting things that are going on.
Sure. Um, so I'm Joy Baxter from St. Paul's Lutheran Church in Ardmore, and I'm the Green Team Chair there.
Um, and I'm going to introduce the program, Pam, unless you want to do it.
Do you have the bios on the
I-
two speakers?
I do, but do you want to do it?
If you've got them and want to go, I just see them there. I think I see them. Hello.
I do.
Great
And
to see
so
you. Go for it.
the program that we're going to hear tonight is Why Go Green, the popularity of national burials. And so we're going to hear from folks at Laurel Hill, which is in Bala Cynwyd, for an introduction into the green funerary movement and the trend toward green or natural funeral and burial services for end-of-life planning. In addition, we'll hear from Laurel Hill's family service representative who will discuss the cemetery's green burial section and native meadow, and nature sanctuary. During this visual presentation, you'll explore cultural understandings of death as it relates to the environment and impacts on the deceased. So let me just say from Laurel Hill, and I'm so grateful for all the work they've put in and their flexibility around scheduling. Joni Sweeney is with us, and she's the marketing, communications, and events specialist. And then we have Kirsten Bryant-Phillip, and during the past 30 years of her career in customer service, Kirsten has had the pleasure of serving and resolving many scenarios for customers. However, her most rewarding experiences have been those in her role as a family service representative. Her personal experiences of loss of loved ones were so sweetly eased and comforted with genuine compassion by the professionals and representatives of various companies charged with the delicate business of life transitions. In addition to her career in customer service, she's a yoga and meditations teacher. And her co-worker who is with us is Angela Burke. Angela has spent her adult career in the service industry, mostly focusing her work in the healthcare industry. Her most rewarding yet challenging position has been as a recreational therapy assistant working in Elder Behavioral Health Center, working predominantly with dual diagnosis patients with dementia. And so she's responsible for, she's been at Laurel Hill since March of 2022 when she decided to change her career path, but is sticking with her knack for guiding family and loved ones through the most difficult times of their lives. So those are our speakers, and I am going to share my screen, and you all are co-hosts, so you should be able to do it. Here's the question I have. Do you want me to do it on Google Chrome? Is that good for you?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. I can do it from here if that's okay.
No, right. Yeah. So I was hoping I had teed it up so that you can do it. Or do you
yes.
Or do you want to share it?
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you. If you can share it.
Make the revision.
Oh, we did make one small revision, so perhaps we should share. That's okay.
That's great. So
Okay.
I'm going to stop sharing and you can take it away.
All right, before I do, I just want to say a quick hello again. We were on just a few minutes before 7:30 and got to hear some of everyone's backgrounds and what they're doing to help preserve and take care of our home. So thank you, thank you, thank you. It's so needed, and hopefully it'll be contagious on, a large scale. But anyway, my name is Kirsten, and I'm really happy to be here to talk about one of my favorite subjects in terms of end of life subjects, and that is our nature sanctuary here at Laurel Hill. I'm going to go ahead and start to share. Can you all see that okay?
No,
No, you cannot?
no.
Okay, 1 second.
Let,
Let's try that again. It's not letting me do it.
there you go.
All right, perfect.
Great, thanks.
Okay. So, as you said earlier, why go green? And just before we start going into nature sanctuary in our green burial section, just a little bit of a background of Laurel Hill, that we have 2 cemeteries and a full service funeral home and a crematory. So we have Laurel Hill West in Bala Cynwyd, and that was established in 1869. And Laurel Hill East, which is in the Philadelphia side of the world. It's overlooking Kelly Drive. And that was established in 1836. As I mentioned before, we have an on-site funeral home, full service, as well as 2 chapels and a crematory. And our funeral home and the staff at the funeral home are very educated, and we do offer green funeral services, which is a perfect complement to our green burial section. So what is green burial? Green burial, of course, is a natural way of burying a loved one. The body is going to biodegrade in the soil much more quickly, or decompose much more quickly in a healthy way in our environment. Can you still see that? So, and you also have to be certified to be a green burial cemetery. So you go through a process of certification through the Green Burial Council. In terms of the certification, each level is hybrid, natural, and conservation. And we are considered a hybrid, and we'll get into that in a little bit. The couple of small major differences, I should say, in the rest of our cemeteries as opposed to nature sanctuary is how we bury in each grave. So in the traditional way, it is with an outer burial container. So the casket must go in a container in order to go into the ground. You also have what's called different burial rites. So actually more than one person can go in one grave. So for example, you can have a casket burial at one level and then one above that, another level. And you also have spaces available above that at the second level for the casket. In the nature sanctuary, it is just one person in one grave, and it's buried much more shallow. And there is no outer burial container that is required because, of course, it has to be biodegradable and healthy for the nature sanctuary area. Yeah. So these are just some photos of nature sanctuary. Right to the bottom right is granite ledger stones. That is where a loved one's inscription would be placed. And anything in nature sanctuary, as well as the wall that was built with the granite ledger stones on top, is material that was from other parts of the cemetery. So nothing was purchased. It's basically reusable material. And there's just some more photos here. And there's pathways throughout nature sanctuary. Plantings are indigenous to this area. And do you want to take from here?
Yeah,
Okay.
so the nature sanctuary is a hybrid green cemetery. So what that is, we're noted as hybrid under the Green Burial Council standards. And so what that involves is quite a few things. We do not use your traditional embalming fluids whenever we tend to bodies to the deceased. We have to utilize Green Burial Council approved non-toxic chemicals for our embalming for the nature sanctuary. The idea is, again, like as Kirsten had noted in a previous slide, we do not use the vaults, outer burial containers, any kind of concrete liner. Everything that is placed into nature sanctuary needs to be biodegradable. So it needs to be, you know, again, just biodegradable. All graves are hand dug, and that helps with minimal impact on the environment. And yeah, we can go ahead and move on. So here's just a few slides of some of our biodegradable caskets that we have. This is a very popular choice here, the wicker casket. And then our shroud is another very popular choice that we utilize here. So what isn't permitted? Okay, so we do have quite a few things that aren't permitted in our nature sanctuary. Jewelry, clothing, again, we're going to stick with our biodegradable materials. Pacemakers, they are removed before you are interred or buried within our nature sanctuary. One thing I would like to note is the bullet point that says existing stones will not be reset and will become part of the landscape or removed. Okay. We used to utilize recycled stones throughout the cemetery and have them engraved and etching with the deceased's name. But what we found was that they were starting to be dug up from the ground. Loved ones would come out to the gardens and dig them up and replace them on the top. And the idea was that they were going to kind of just sink down, become one with, you know, the evolving pattern throughout the nature sanctuary. So we eliminated that, and we started doing the ledger stones bordering the nature sanctuary on the roadside, which is actually quite lovely because they're benches as well as a place to memorialize. So you can sit there and stare at the gardens and just have a nice place to sit and relax. One thing too, we do not allow plantings. That's one thing that I want to bring up, but we do offer our families to come out and participate in family planting events. So we actually have one coming up on Saturday where we have invited anyone that owns property at Nature Sanctuary or anyone who has a loved one in Nature Sanctuary to come out and help us to plant the indigenous and, you know, planting the flowers, the grasses, everything that is indigenous to the area. So that's something that's a really great bonding moment. People get really excited about that. So how do I find my loved one within Nature Sanctuary? So on the right-hand side of the screen, you will see the ledger stones. There's a bench and then the ledger stone. Typically, the names are listed directly in front of, Kirsten, help me. I'm sorry.
So the ledger stones are actually at the entrance of Nature Sanctuary, and as Angela mentioned, alternating ledger stone to bench. So the flat area is where you can sit, relax, meditate, reflect, and then the kind of slanted granite ledger stone is where we would inscribe your loved one's name. And it's usually in line with where they are buried. So while you cannot really know exactly where, there's a lot of different ways that we can assist. And again, the idea is that once that loved one is gone, they're going back to earth. They're just kind of like the circle of life, and they're a part of that now.
Yeah. Now the picture on the left-hand side of the screen is those are actually the pathways throughout our nature sanctuary. So there's different gardens. So you have the oak garden, the hickory garden, and then you would know to go and you can go and visit your loved one and sit either on the bench or just walk around the garden that they were interred at. Okay. Do this one? Yes.
All right. So the maintenance of Nature Sanctuary, of course, is a love of labor. And we have an amazing horticulturist staff that are constantly working to maintain Nature Sanctuary in its most natural state, of course. So it's currently a meadowland with a rain garden to help prevent storm water runoff. And once again, it's with indigenous plants. Anything to help keep pests away, it's all natural. So natural herbicides and leaf mulching to help maintain the meadowland. Eventually, it will evolve into a forest. So while it is not something that is mulching, no, I'm not, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not where your body is part of the mulching process. You are part of the evolution from meadowland to woodland area. So I just think that's just really, to me, it's very important to say that, because you're part of giving something back, very important, and in a very important way. So you help bring the meadowland into a forest land in the future.
Went the wrong way.
Oh, sorry, went the wrong way. Apologize. So we've received quite a bit of awards, as you can see here on this next slide. We're the only cemetery in the world that has received Sites Gold certified. So we're very proud about that. And that happened in about 2018. Lower Merion Township, Go for the Green Award, Go for the Green Lifetime Achievement Award, acknowledgement as part of the Lower Merion's pollinator pathway, and our funeral home and nature sanctuaries are certified by the Green Burial Council. So we do have not only our horticultural staff, we also have volunteers year-round helping to maintain nature sanctuary. And so we're going to the next slide, because now we're going to talk a little bit about Laurel Hill East over in Kelly Drive, because we're going to expand to have a green burial section called Valley View Green. We are probably, maybe by the end of this year, maybe a little bit past, will be sold out in nature sanctuary. So it is started out a little slow, and all of a sudden, I would say in the last 3 years, people have just been really hearing about it and really prefer to go this route. So it's become very, very, very popular. And so that's why we are expanding over to Laurel Hill East to Valley View Green, which is due to be finished, I guess, in the next couple of months, maybe 90 days or so. And that is basically it. Does
Yeah, I mean,
anyone
I think
have
we-
questions?
Sorry if we kind of sped through that there for a moment.
What is the cost compared to the usual burial?
It's a great question. So one of the things that we like to mention whenever we are, meeting with families that are just in need of property in the green burial section, is that whenever you look at your traditional burials, you're looking at, your the property costs, the opening and closing costs, which is the kind of friendly way to say you dig the grave and, cover the grave. Also, you're looking at the memorialization. So a headstone, all of those things get tied in together, and they could get pretty costly depending on if you get, your memorialization can get up there in cost, especially now with the way that granite is actually very hard to get, and there's delays due to the pandemic. So the cost is, I would say, Kirsten will do a little bit of an estimate here.
Oh, we can tell them.
Yeah, I mean,
it's quite expensive. It's $12,000 per grave, and that does not include your interment fee or the opening and closing fee. But you do save on not purchasing a monument, which can get pretty expensive. And of course, you do not have to have that out of burial container. It's not permitted in nature sanctuary. That minimum price is about $1,200 alone. And then you're looking at, well, the opening and closing fees, of course, are, every grave has a fee for the interment. So you are saving on some costs in terms of the stone and the out of burial container. It's still going to be a little bit more, and there's, reason behind it. It's just because of how we need to maintain it, and the price now is because we're actually really limited on space in Nature Sanctuary. However, in Valley View Green at Laurel Hill East, it's going to be much more cost effective. I think we're right around $5,000 for a grave there. And while it's not going to have the same certifications, it will be certified green burial, and it's going to be gorgeous.
So I have a question
Yes.
from Lucy. So you said joint replacements are removed, and what about a coil for an aneurysm?
Well, I'm sorry, coil for an aneurysm?
Yeah, so a coil in somebody's head or somebody's.
That's a great question. That's something I would ask the funeral
Yeah, I would
director.
definitely have to follow up on that.
I'm going to venture to say yes, that may be removed, but I don't know. I'm not familiar with that, so that's not my area of expertise to even answer definitively.
It would definitely just depend on what the material is. So if whoever asked that question is able to follow up with the material that the coil was made from, then we could properly answer that with assistance from our funeral directors.
Okay, great. So I have a question. How long has this been around? How long have you been doing natural burials?
2008.
Wow. And then have you been planting all these natives since 2008?
Yeah, so when Nature Sanctuary first came to be, it was the designer planned it in a way that was said to be kind of, it can evolve on its own, but it didn't necessarily work out that way because there was a lot of unforeseen challenges with very invasive weeds that were just really, really difficult to get rid of, especially when you're trying to just use all natural products, of course.
Okay.
So it's just in the last couple of years, our horticulturists and our arborists have just really been working tirelessly to maintain it. So they have been doing a lot of plantings, I would say, in the last 3 years or so. And it's just been looking absolutely spectacular in the summer months.
Yeah, they always say
you
it's
know.
a constant,
Yeah.
work in progress. And every time you drive past it, it looks different, whether, after a rain, after, a good, patch of sunny days, it's constantly forever changing. So they have to constantly stay on top of it. And that's, they do a fabulous job
Mhm.
of learning about, the area that they're growing the plants in, what's really thriving, what's really not thriving, what's really, just gonna, stick around and bring in the proper, insects and birds that we want there to help pollinate and keep away the critters that we don't want, there. But we have a really, really great team that maintains that.
And so I have one other question, and then please, so you can raise your hand and I will call on you, or you can write a note in the chat and I will ask our folks. How many spots do you have for bodies? On one side and then on the other, right? So you have two sides, right?
Yeah, so Laurel Hill East, the newer,
Uh-huh.
I don't have the exact number, but it's somewhere around 500 graves. I have a
Okay.
map. Do you have it right there?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's approximately
Yeah.
500 graves. And I think with Nature Sanctuary, we might have
I want to say maybe 80.
80 left, if that.
80 left. And then
Yeah.
how many are filled?
Well, not all are filled. A lot of people have prearranged
Got it.
or purchased in advance. But it's at 65 acres, so around 500 total.
Okay.
I can't say how many are buried there right now. I'm sorry, I don't have that
No,
information in front of me.
no. That I just wanted to get an idea of
Yeah.
how big it is. So We have Dagmar and then Jan. Dagmar, cemetery.
Yeah, hi. I have a couple of questions. One
Sure.
is, yeah, who removes all those things in the body? Who does that? You know, like
Your-
the pacemaker and all the other stuff.
The funeral director that you choose.
Okay.
Mhm.
And do you have to be from Pennsylvania in order to use these cemeteries?
No.
No, we have people that, you know, from everywhere. Just
Okay.
us being such a historical cemetery and being around for so long,
Right.
we're used to catering to individuals that, you know, need to be flown in from Florida, Oregon, you know, like all over.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I think I had another question. No, I don't remember what it is now, but I do have another one. If I get to it, I'll raise my hand again. Thank
That's
you.
great. Thanks.
Mhm.
Jan Nielsen and then Jerry.
This may be a question for anybody actually on the call, and that is it against the law in Pennsylvania to just be put in a shroud and buried out in the woods?
You have to have a permit to do something like that. I don't know the process, but there is a process.
Do you know any examples where that permitting process has been approved in some county or whatever?
I don't
I do
personally.
not know.
I do. Well, I know of I know of a Sufi community in Overbrook. They have a burial plot out in Unionville, Pennsylvania. They bury their members there.
Mm.
And yeah, that's the only community that I know of, because Muslims bury their folks just in a shroud. They don't use, and your wicker baskets are lovely. Is that
And
is
you,
that
and
a,
yes, you can also be buried just in a shroud in nature sanctuary.
oh, well,
Yeah, and maybe I misunderstood the gentleman's question. I thought maybe he said separate, like not necessarily in a cemetery. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. That's my
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, so I think
can a
that's a
person be
process
just
you
put
have
in a shroud and buried out in the woods somewhere?
Right, yes. So I think that is a process of that you have to get from basically get permission, and I don't know what type of paperwork or what's involved in that, but I believe you have to do that.
Mhm.
So,
I thought that was my, oh, I'm sorry.
so Dagmar, I'll get back to you. Let me go to Jerry and then to Pam, and then I'll go to you, okay? Jerry,
Yeah, how do I, oh, there it is.
you're good.
Yeah, thank you both so much for this. It's just been enlightening to hear about this. And
Oh, thank you.
I've wanted to know more about it for so long. And I'm wondering about you said that they're sold other places. So that, for instance, if I go first, then my husband would buy 2 places and then there would be room for him to go near me.
That's a great question. Yes. So I don't think we touched on that.
No, we
So
didn't.
with nature sanctuary, it's not like in other cemeteries where you can actually pick your location.
Oh,
But
wonderful.
because it's going to evolve into a woodland area, the burials happen in succession.
Okay.
And so you don't get to pick your grave. It gets picked for you at the time of death. If you're married and you want to make sure your spouse is next to you, then the recommendation would be to purchase a lot in advance so that we can reserve that space for the future. Otherwise, we just can't guarantee that you'll be next to your spouse.
So you put your.
So
you
we
would be
place a
putting one place.
reserve.
What?
We place a reserve. So
Right
if,
next to you.
Right,
yes,
yes.
Oh, okay, good. That's interesting. And then for the immortalizing it, on the granite, would you write the names together, or is it a whole list of all the people that are in there?
So you engrave the deceased's name, and then we would reserve space for the next person that is going to be buried next to you. So there'll be your name or whoever's name, and then we'll just reserve that space either below or beside.
I get it. Okay,
Mhm.
thanks. And then I guess my other question is about you're saying that it's going to evolve into woods, and are you planting trees amongst these flowers?
Yes, they're doing plantings. Absolutely. That's something that if you go, if you ever get a chance to come out and view the nature sanctuary, you can see where the trees are starting to grow, and that's where the plantings have begun. So that's part of the whole journey to the Badlands. I'll say,
Yeah, so the idea is once an area is filled with bodies, then they will do the tree plantings in that area.
Okay.
How do you, can I ask a question? How do you,
Arthur, can you hold on just a second? Pam was
I
next,
just
okay?
wanted
And
to
I'll
finish
come
this.
back to you.
Okay,
Pam,
I'll stop.
you're muted.
thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you. Can I see, can you view a plan where where you see the trees? With the
I'm sorry,
trees-
one more time?
Is it open to see a plan where you view what kind of trees and what they're putting in?
Yes, absolutely. And our horticulturists and arborists team, they love talking about nature sanctuary. If you want more information, or if you want to come out and take a look, we'd be happy to show you.
Yeah, I had a friend that died in March. So it wasn't there was nothing blooming or anything, and it was looked pretty barren. I didn't see the trees, so it would be interesting to see.
Yeah, there's some trees there now, some very young trees now.
Okay.
And you're right, but we're about to go into the mulch season, so it's just going to be brown and flat.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks so
Pam,
much.
Pam?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was muted. You've answered a lot of questions. This is a wonderful presentation. But you had mentioned that the old lots are running at around 11 or 12,000 and the new lots are at 5,000. What's different about them that they can be so much less expensive?
Great question. One of the things there's a lot of differences between what we're going to be doing on the eastern side as opposed to what we've done and accomplished on the western side. One of the things is we're not going to be able to achieve that site's gold certification that we've achieved over here. So we will be using a battery operated backhoe over there. There's tall grasses, greeneries. Okay, so it's going to be less maintenance and monies that we have to put out, and the less manpower, I'll say, that we have to utilize to maintain the grounds over on the eastern side versus the western side. If that makes sense. The graves are going to be assigned graves there. So unlike what we're doing over at Nature Sanctuary that Kirsten had just described, where, you don't pick a site, it just goes in succession. So there you will be assigned a grave site, I apologize.
Because they're not changing into a woodland area. It's not evolving.
Yes. So there are quite a few differences, but still going to be quite lovely over there.
I would like to add also, Nature Sanctuary, like Angela said, is a different type of maintenance, but also it's we're running out of space. It has been around since 2008. So that, as we're everywhere else in the cemetery, prices go up from year to year to year. And while Valley View Green is very reasonable at this time, it'll eventually go up and up and up and up. I don't know if it'll get to the 12,000 mark, but it's definitely one of the reasons why we're at that point is because the demand has just become so great that we know that we're not going to have space to sell next year.
And we're putting aside the monies to be able to properly maintain it and keep, because it's not cheap to have the natural chemicals that keep away the deers and the animals that we don't want coming into the nature sanctuary. versus, the animals and, the pollinators, the ones that we do, the positive ones that we want to come around. So it's a lot to do with the maintenance and, the plantings that are happening.
But do I understand that the new area will still have native plantings and
Yeah.
they'll still be calling forth pollinators, but maybe they'll be designed in a way that you don't need as much maintenance? Is
Correct.
that more natural? Because those are absolutely gorgeous gardens. I just want to go out there and walk your beautiful gardens. And then I just have a question about, I guess I'm just curious. If you put a body in, how long before you can plant on there? So how long is it just soil? And then how long before it's fully green?
So I don't know the timeline. That is something that I would love to be able to get back, or we would love to be able to get back to you about it. But I will say, there has to be some mulching that happens. The ground then settles, then we have to do it again. And there is not a long period, but there is a process where, the ground will settle and reseed, and then we have to plant more dirt, more mulching before they even think about doing plantings there.
Okay, and how long does a human body in the ground, maybe you don't know this, but I'm curious.
It depends
Take?
on it. Yeah, it depends on the condition of the body. But for the most part, obviously, body biodegrades much more quickly. That's not embalmed or in a vault or in a casket with metal. And of course, it's going to biodegrade the quickest if the body is just in a shroud.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. Yes. Oh, Arthur, you're muted. Sorry. I can't see
Sorry.
your mouth move. There you go.
How do you handle burial ceremonies? For instance, in Judaism, it's common for the people that have gathered to be at the grave site and take a shovel full of dirt and put it on the casket. That's my experience, or the shroud. But you say that you prohibit walking on that area.
Well, prohibit is, I think, lack of a better, you use that term loosely, of course, in a graveside service and in keeping with the Jewish traditions, because we do that a lot in our cemetery with the different Jewish sections in the cemetery as well as throughout the entire cemetery. So it's not uncommon for those who've chosen to purchase a nature sanctuary to not only place dirt in the ground, but fill the grave completely. So we welcome that. And that would not, go against, disturbing any plantings. When we say prohibited to walk off the path, it's like, well, you can't just walk through nature, so you have to stay on the pathway. Well, but when it comes to burials, you absolutely are right there, and you can fill the grave if you wanted to.
Thank you.
And so David Heen Menendez wasn't here for the whole presentation, and he said you can't be embalmed if buried directly in the ground. But you talked about the fact that you have a natural embalming or a more natural embalming. So can you just say something about that real quickly?
Right there. So we do here at our funeral home, we do it's called eco balming. So it's just an alternative to the traditional high exposure formaldehyde embalming.
Okay.
It's something that it allows and it holds for about 3 to 5 days. But we also do have a body can withstand a little bit longer within our controlled temperature environment. So if it gives you time to prepare, if you need to, the funeral services and just make arrangements. But we do, offer that here.
Okay, thanks.
What,
Thank
so
you.
the eco embalming, I can't say exactly what, but they are natural fluids to help maintain or preserve the body for a short period of time. What people may not know though is embalming really is not required by the state of Pennsylvania unless you're having a public viewing. And if you're a funeral home that has controlled temperature, embalming's not really necessary. Unless, like I said, a public viewing, or perhaps the body for whatever reason was not in good condition and the family wants to view the body, they might consider doing that. And then if they're a nature sanctuary, then the eco bombing would be a great option, but it's not necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is so
So-
informative.
Very interesting. Does anybody else have any questions for Kirsten and Angela?
I did have one more, Courtney, actually.
Yes, Pam.
So when my parents passed, they had purchased cremation, and they bought them in California, and they were cremated in another state, and the organization was nationwide. I understand Laurel Hill is, if you buy, you have to be buried there. Is there any discussion happening? It seems to me that going green is becoming more and more popular. Is there any discussion of creating a national network so that people can, as my parents did, which was so appreciated at the time, they had prepaid, they had somebody there to take care, but it was on a national level.
I'm not sure I understand. What do you mean national level?
Oh, so the organization, the
Okay.
cremation organization,
Mhm. Oh, okay.
would, whether
Cremation
they died in
Society.
Connecticut or they died in California or Nevada, there was an office and they were able to handle there. I don't know. I understand. I don't think it's happening right now with Laurel Hill, but is there any discussion about a national organization?
Right.
Not necessarily with us, but the Green Burial Council is probably the closest thing to what to where you can find nationwide
Information about Laurel Hill.
information.
We're a private nonprofit. So I don't, well, let me just, if I can understand your question a little better. You're saying, they were a part, that company, the Cremation Society, if you will,
Yes.
they can access that anywhere in the world and be able to be taken care of, their final arrangements.
Correct.
And you're asking if Laurel Hill can offer that to families or join an organization.
Or even if, I mean, it'd be
Yeah.
great. I looked around, and you guys are by far, and not only are you incredibly well accredited, but you're also the closest to where I live right now.
Mhm.
But in 30 years, I don't know where I'm going to be.
Right.
And if I
So,
wanted to prepay like my parents did, they'd have to ship my body back to Bala Cynwyd, correct?
okay, so now I understand better what you're
Yes,
coming
sir.
from. If you're pre-arranging your funeral arrangements through us, just the funeral, not the cemetery. So cemetery meaning nature sanctuary and your burial plot, right? If you're planning your funeral arrangements, the monies that you put into that can be transferred to any funeral home that you choose. The only drawback from that is it's only going to be for that amount you planned for at Laurel Hill Funeral Home. The next funeral home might be more expensive or less expensive. And then you have to consider inflation over time. Okay, so at least you'll have that money. If you say you planned it here in 2022, in 2030, you move to California and you're going to use this funeral home, you can do that. You can transfer those funds over. As far as the cemetery, that is not the case. So I know what you mean, because there is an organization for cemeteries that you can belong to if you live in Pennsylvania, you decide to move to Florida, if those cemeteries belong to that organization, then the equity you put in your plot here in Pennsylvania can be transferred to the cemetery if they belong to that organization. We do not. We are a private nonprofit organization, and we don't belong to that type of an organization. I don't know if we will in the future. I'm going to lean towards no because of how our company is structured.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Can you all put a link in the chat for people that want more information, want to come and visit? Who do they talk to? Can
That's
you
a
all
good
just
idea.
please just
Us.
So I don't have a link. I can give, I guess we can give you,
an email?
Is there
Yeah,
a
we can
way
do
that
it
you
in-
can get Joni to,
is she still on the call?
So I asked her
Uh-huh.
and she didn't respond. That's why I'm asking you.
Okay.
Okay.
Is it okay that we follow up with you? Because I want to make sure, we want to make sure that we give you the best direction.
Sure. So you can
so
follow
if you want to
up
gather emails, that would be great.
and
Or we can just send you an email with how to
go-
proceed.
yeah.
To
Yeah,
get the
that-
information out rather than.
It's been a
you know,
long
have-
day, sorry.
Okay.
Before we end, may I ask another question?
Sure,
Can you stop the screen share so that people can see everybody's face?
absolutely. If I can figure that out, I'll be,
You just hit the green.
yeah,
or
I
up
don't
at
know
the
why
top, it
I'm,
says
Oh,
stop
right here.
share.
there you
At the
go,
top.
stop share.
Yay.
Sorry.
Okay.
I wanted to just
Uh,
ask one other question.
Jerry, you had one other question. Yes.
Yeah, just wanted to ask, if now I've forgotten, wait a minute. So you have this forest area that this area is going to turn into a forest, and you said the places are all filling up. Is Laurel Hill big enough to have another area that where you'll have the same kind of a thing? It'll keep going on and fill more of West Laurel Hill with the green? There is.
Yes, short answer, yes. We have enough space to have a whole other green section over at Laurel Hill East.
Good. Okay. Thank you. That was a question. Good question.
Sure. Mhm.
We don't have to rush into something.
Well, and she said
That's right,
west
and
and
it's-
west.
West, there's been talks, but we don't know anything for sure for Laurel Hill West. But
you don't.
definitely Laurel Hill East is going to have a wonderful option in Valley View Green.
Great. Dagmar has one more question.
Thank
Sure.
you so much.
Okay, yes. Initially, in the very beginning of our conversation, you mentioned the cost of the burial. And I wanted to know, does that include all, like, the wicker casket? And no, what does that include? The cost that you mentioned was the opening of the grave, the closing of the grave, the taking out the toxins in the body. What does it include? The cost?
The $12,000 cost?
Yes.
That's just the property. Everything else is
Oh.
separate. Yeah. Mhm.
Can you give a ballpark figure for any of that?
If
Like
you're- Sure. So if you're looking for funeral services, as well as the opening and closing, the inscription, the property for one person, you're looking at easily around 20,000.
okay.
Mhm.
And that's at both places or just at the?
It's gonna be a little less at Laurel Hill East, because keep in
Mhm.
mind that the grave itself or the property itself is a little more than half the price.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you both so much. It has just been terrific to have you with us. We're grateful for your information and for your patience in answering all our questions.
Of course.
And indeed, Joni's email is in the chat, so folks can get in touch with her
Oh, good.
at jsweeney@laurelhillphil.com. Thank you. I'm gonna actually, do you have anything else that you want to say to us?
Thank you for having
Yeah,
us.
thank you for having us. This is really, really wonderful to share this time with you all.
Thanks.